Alka, I am so excited to have you on the show today. There are so many things that I have that I want to ask you, but I know that we need to always start at the beginning. So listeners know that we always start at the beginning of the story and then we move on through but she's just such a great guest, everybody. So be super excited about what is to come. Alka, thanks for being on.
Hey, Lauren, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm a fan of your podcast. You have had great guests, different entrepreneurs, athletes, minorities, women. It's amazing to learn their journeys and financial freedom and tying in with finances. So, thank you for letting me be part of your community.
Definitely. I am so glad that you are now a part of the Worth Listening community. So I just told everyone a little bit about you, but I want you to go back and, like I said, kind of start at that beginning and tell us kind of where it all started for you. So, what did your parents do? Where are you from? Do you have siblings? Just give us the rundown.
Oh, sure, sure. So I grew up in India in a middle income, middle class household. My mom was a homemaker, and my dad held multiple businesses. Not like nothing steady, but we were all really interested in studying. I have three other sisters and a brother, and we all two of my sisters and myself, we went to med school because we really wanted to study. And my dad, unfortunately, didn't have an opportunity to go to college because his dad passed away very young, and he had to step up and take care of the family. So he always encouraged, girls to study. In fact, some of our relatives would say, "Oh, you're wasting money. The girls are going to get married, go to their husband's house. Why are you putting, so much effort?" And he said, "No, I didn't get a chance to go to college. I want them to be independent and, they have talent and they want to learn." So we all pretty much went to professional school. So thankful to my dad and my mom, and they always encouraged us to do our best, fail 100 times, but still keep trudging along, and you will reach success. So that was really ingrained into me. So I was always a hard worker, kind of nerdy in med school, studying umpteen hours, but made it, and then got married, and then wanted to pursue further education. So I went to Canada first to do a fellowship, and then was there for a couple of years, and then moved to the US. And somewhere along the way, my ex-husband lost a bunch of money in stock market. And I was very naive about finances. I did not even know the difference between stock and a bond. So, but once this happened, I said, okay, I'm not stupid, I'm ignorant. So I can afford, I can learn this stuff. So that's where my journey started. This was, many, many years ago. So I started reading up all the books on finances and, started investing in stock market, read about asset protection planning. So put all those things into places, put 5 to 9 plan for my kids' education. So that's my journey. And then few years ago, I was really heading towards burnout. I was working so much in my radiology field, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And then I said, okay, I'm making income, good income, but I have no quality of life, like I'm saving money, but then, it's no quality. So then I started looking for passive sources of income so that I don't have to work as much and kind of, trying to replace my active income. So I decided to cut down, so switch jobs, got a part-time job. So now I work about 10 days of the month. I work 1 week on, 1 week off, pretty much. So in 20 days, I have time to pursue my new passion, which is real estate and investing. So that journey started about 5 years ago.
Wow, this is an amazing story. So there's a lot we have to unpack about what you have said so far. So I want to go back to that part where you were saying that your father very much wanted you all to be educated, and that was an important part of, his belief system, because of what he experienced. Would you say that that is something that is not traditional as it pertains to Indian culture, or, was that just something that was specific that, like you said, in general, people hadn't really experienced in your family?
I think, during those times, it was not typical for women to be so highly educated. And most middle class families, they won't really encourage their kids. Maybe they'll do high school or maybe they'll do regular college, but to go to a professional school, it wasn't, the norm. Of course, there are always families, who want their kids to study and progress. So I would say my father, at least in our circle, was pretty exceptional that way. He really encouraged us to do our best.
And what about things that like kind of happened household wise with finances? So I know you mentioned that your mother stayed at home and your father was the main breadwinner. Were there lots of conversations about finances that you were privy to, or did you not know very much about what your financial state was when you were growing up?
Not so much privy to the financial state, but I do know that we were comfortable, like we had enough to live comfortably, but we did not have any money for luxuries, and we pretty much, if we wanted something, we had to pay cash. There were no credit cards back then in India, so if you didn't have money to buy something, you didn't buy it, or if you wanted something, then you saved up. So that financial security became important because we really didn't have any surplus or any savings. It was pretty much living comfortably but not no luxuries, simple lifestyle.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point that a lot of people kind of take for granted. Here in America, a credit card is a normal thing. It's something that, as soon as you turn 18, a lot of people have. Sometimes they even have it before 18. Now we live in a world, just even technology wise, where there's always some kind of card you're swiping, and cash is used very little. But how different a world it was when, the credit card debt was not a thing because the credit cards were not a thing. So you
Exactly.
could only buy what you could afford. And, just even what a different trajectory your life can go on because, debt is not even an option for what you have available to you. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and we used to hear stories about people getting into so much debt, people who lose their agricultural land or their homes even. So, that was like a really no-no in our household. So that was looked at as something very bad. But of course, now I've realized there's good debt and bad debt. And also, for credit cards, we all have credit cards, but of course, we only spend on credit cards what we can afford to. We have to pay it off every month, so we don't carry any debts. Otherwise, we won't put it on the credit card. So fortunately, my two children have also learned that, and they're very wise with their credit use, and keeping high credit score and being financially and fiscally responsible.
That is so wonderful. And I think just like you said, the framework having already been laid just like makes it that much easier. What about jobs that you had? Did you have jobs while you were in India, like before you went off to Canada? Or did you get an allowance or, how did kind of money work for little things you needed as a young adult?
Well, we had to beg a lot of our parents. Can we buy this? Can we buy that? So, yeah, no allowance per se, and I didn't have any jobs. In India, it's not common for children to get jobs. It's really expected that all they do is focus on their studies. So nothing to distract from studies, no jobs, no extracurricular activities. So you're just trained to study, study, study. So that's the mindset I grew up with. But of course, my parents were, very reasonable. So if we wanted something really bad, then they will, make sure that everybody got their fair share. So I didn't feel like we lacked anything growing up. We had a very simple lifestyle, but, but growing up in a happy household, with restrictions, it was really good. I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you had like just a really fun upbringing and you really enjoyed it. Let's fast forward back to when you talked about leaving India to go to Canada. What were the circumstances that led you to leave from India and go specifically to Canada of the various places in the world that you could have traveled to?
Yeah, it was actually my ex-husband. He always wanted to, study abroad and further his knowledge and education. I would have been okay staying back in India, but I accompanied him. And then once I, trained here, that I really enjoyed being here, and saw that my children will have better opportunities here. So we decided to stay on, and that's how it worked out.
Super cool. All right. So you went to medical school. Where did you go to medical school? In Canada or in America?
No, in India.
Oh, in India. Okay. So
Yeah,
medical
medical
school.
school in India, some of my residency in India, then I did some residency in US, and then I did my fellowship in Canada.
Got it. Okay. So there was quite a bit of it. So yeah. So you were an adult
Yeah.
in India, then went over to US and then to Canada. And then, all right. And what made you want to practice medicine? I know you said education was a very important part, but why did you choose medicine specifically?
Yeah, right from the get-go, I really wanted to, be a doctor. My sisters were an inspiration. Two of my older sisters are physicians. So I always, and I also wanted to make a difference, being in a helping profession, trying to make a difference, by taking care of patients. So that was always, something that really intrigued me. And I really enjoyed learning about human body and the whole medical profession. So yeah, I would do it all over again.
That's amazing. I think one of the big kind of perceptions or even maybe myths about the profession of being a physician is that everybody is super duper rich and like a lot of people don't have a lot of, from my point of view, a lot of empathy or sympathy toward physicians because they feel like they earn all this money and I'm going to have medical bankruptcy because I'm ill and those sorts of things. But I've learned over time, being married to a physician, that's not true. And then also just interacting in the financial world, that a lot of what we assume is not actual the reality. And one of the biggest parts of it is student loan debt. I talk to physicians probably 4 or 5 times a week doing student loan analysis, and some of them have as upwards of $600,000 of student loan debt, because that it is such an expensive education to get in order to be able to do the work that you all do. So my question for you, I know you did your medical schooling in India. How does it work there? Is it is it as expensive as it is here in America, and how did that kind of part play itself out for you as you started to navigate life?
Actually, in India, it's not expensive compared to here. So, did not have any student loans. I got a scholarship in my high school final exam. I was fifth in, in my county. So I got scholarship, and medical school, I would think probably cost me about $100 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had my sister, so I had a lot of hand-me-down medical books and textbooks and stuff. So I didn't have to spend money on those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it wasn't expensive. Plus, I had the scholarship, and living in the dorm in medical school was also very, very reasonable. So yeah, I see some of my friends here in US who have so much student loan debt, like you said. It's unbelievable. I don't think the education should be this expensive.
We definitely need a revamping of the whole educational system. That is for sure. So that's a really cool situation to not have the student loan debt, and then to come over and, like you said, go through residency, through fellowship. And I didn't ask you, what kind of physician are you? What kind of
I'm a
medicine?
radiologist.
Radiology. So what happens with a radiologist? What exactly does a radiologist do?
Radiologists, we interpret all the imaging studies like MRIs, CTs, ultrasounds, mammograms. So the technologists perform the studies, and then we interpret them and generate a report. So we call ourselves like doctors, like we are consultants to the doctors. So the doctors treating the patient, they take our radiology report into account, and we are their consultants, in treating the patient.
Aha. Something new you learn every day. All right. So we've made it through medical school, residency, fellowship, and now you're a practicing physician. Let's talk about kind of how you started to organize your finances and what you were thinking of. Can you go back to the time when you first started practicing medicine as an attending, and what you were thinking kind of financially at that stage of your life?
I grew up with the financial blueprint, that you always have to live within your means.
Mm-hmm.
So we never spent anything more that we couldn't afford or had the cash for. So that was my money blueprint, and it has really served me well. So we always were, I was always able to save part of my income. I really believe in pay yourself first. And, even for people who are having a tough time finding, any money left over in their budget, I would suggest, pay yourself first. But even if it's $50, get that taken out of your paycheck. So if you don't see it, you're not going to miss it. So that's been my philosophy. So always, saving a portion of the income and building a nest egg and building, a emergency fund. That was, number one priority. And also just, making financially smart decisions. We always bought used cars, keep the cars till they, run into ground. I drive a 7-year-old car that has over 100,000 miles now, because car is a depreciating asset, All that money I would spend for a new car, I would rather buy a house or a property that will actually be paying me down the road. So, live a frugal lifestyle, be a saver, and that's been my path.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So many of the things that you just said are also my beliefs. And, I just love to hear that the information is out there. Do you have like a financial person or planner or something like that yeah. So
No.
That's exactly my point, is that, while I would love for everyone to have a financial planner, Alka right here is living proof that, doing the work of putting the strong foundation in place, following the principles of, basic personal finance practices can be so rewarding. And so I've said 100 times on the podcast, pay yourself first. And you talked about that just now. The idea of not looking for what's left over, but deciding that you're important enough to put money away for, and then, live off of what's left over. And then also you said about driving the cars, and, a car is a depreciating asset. As you align your budget and you think about what you want to spend money on and what are your values, you look at the things and say, okay, these are the necessities that I need. A car is one of those necessities. It gets me from point A to point B, but it is not something that is going to help me, retire early. It is not something that is going to, afford me the opportunity to, maybe go travel to this place or do that. I've got to think about what the things are that are important to me in my life and my values, and then start to build my spending around that. So I think those are really, really good tips that you gave everyone. One question I did have is, as you kind of sorted through your finances, are there any things that happened along the way that you would kind of point out as a financial failure or a mistake, or something that you wish you would have done differently or didn't know initially and had to learn the hard way?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I did not know anything about investing. Saving is one thing, but then, just keeping your money in cash is, you are actually losing value. So I had to learn investing it wisely so it grows over time. And I think one regret I do have, looking back, I wish I had started investing in real estate much earlier. I did start investing in, stock market when I started this education on investing and learning about stock market and bond market. But I think, investing in real estate many, many moons ago would have been a very smart decision. So yes, that's just looking back. So I tell my kids now, I said, when you buy a house, make sure you buy a duplex or a threeplex or, or fourplex. So that way, the renters are paying down your mortgage.
I think that's a perfect segue into, kind of that area of expertise that you've developed now. And like you said, the way that you're organizing your finances. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate investing, how things unfolded for you, what kind of research, or, what was your first property like? How did you, save up or, put down a percentage, or, yeah. Can you just kind of walk us through how it unfolded for you initially and your first property, and what your kind of overall strategy is as it pertains to real estate investing?
Yeah, I think I was really looking for like passive income, mailbox money, so that way I didn't have to work there. And one of my friends jokingly says that doctors are glorified laborers, so you get paid when you work. So when you're not working, you don't get paid. But I wanted to have that consistent, making money in your sleep. So I could, pursue other things and have time freedom. So I started looking at real estate. I kind of always liked real estate. And then an acquaintance of mine, she said, well, there's a little house here, near where I live in Tampa. And she said, the buyer's financing is going to fall through if you want to take a look at it. And I was really nervous because, I didn't say, oh, that's a big commitment. What if I lose my money? So then I looked at the house. It was a simple 2-bedroom, 2-bath, house for under 70,000. So then I said, okay. So I wrote down all my worst case scenarios. So I talked to, my friends, my family, and then I said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I don't like it, then maybe I can just sell the house. It's still a house. It's not going to go down to zero. So that gave me encouragement, and I took the plunge. I bought this house, and then I didn't want anything to do with it. So I gave it to a property manager. It sat empty for 2 months. Then I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? And then it got rented. And then I remember I was on vacation. I came back, and at that time, they were still mailing checks. And the check was in my mailbox for the rental amount. And I said, whoa, I'm on vacation and I'm getting all this money. So that's when the light bulb went off. So I said, okay, this is going to work. So then I got really serious about it. So I started educating myself, listening to podcasts, reading up blogs, going on bigger podcasts, talking to other investors. I joined local real estate investor meetings. I joined their group, attended the meetings regularly. So that's when I started buying, and then I bought duplexes, I bought triplex and a fourplex over the last 3-4 years.
Okay. So, you said so many gems at the beginning of, unfolding this. So the first property was $70,000. Which I think one of the big myths that we bump into is that, you have to get something that's 300,000 or 400,000, and that there are no cheap properties out there. So you started very small, that's a very affordable property, that can, and it was also a single family home. So while we know that, like you said, multi-family homes, present that opportunity for multiple renters, you did start with a single family home, something that was going to be affordable, for you. And like you said, just to get your feet wet and get an understanding of how this all worked. So then it sounds like the next thing is, you got a property manager. And so I think that is an important thing when you're new to real estate investing. One thing that a lot of people try to do is cut corners and say like, "Ooh, I don't want to waste another dollar. Like I need to get as much money, into my own pocket." And they skip over some of the steps and the very necessary expenses. So the property manager is the person who's going to help you, get someone in there, make sure that everything is done properly. They're going to, make sure the lease is signed, vet the person before they get into the property. And while it is an expense, it is worthwhile to have somebody be able to look at those things and say, all right, here's what you need to know. And here's, based on my years of experience, what, would be best as it pertains to getting someone in the house so that you can, collect that income, et cetera. So, I think that was also a very important thing that you pointed out. And then, the third thing was like, it took a little bit of time. You did this small thing. You got the property manager. Things started to come along, and like you said, a light bulb came on. You're like, oh, this is really awesome. Like, I'd love to do more of this. Let me go learn more about it. And I think that is a crucial step that so many people skip over. It's just like, oh, down payment, realtor, house, next. Down payment, realtor, house, next. And it's like a really key piece of being successful at creating passive income is having that education. And so it sounds like you did quite a bit of research before you started to kind of jump off the deep end and get deeper involved in this. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and in terms of property management, the property manager wasn't doing a great job, and since it was my first house, so I said, okay, that's fine. But then I said, okay, I can do this. So I actually took over property management. So now I actually manage my own properties for the most part. I have 16 units now. So.
Okay, yeah, that was going to actually be my next question too. Is like, I know you said you purchased some additional properties, so now you're at 16 different units. Can you talk about the time commitment related to doing the property management on your own?
I was trying to track it, but I'm not there yet, like tracking like every minute. But I would say about 20 hours a month.
Okay.
Yeah, and since I work part-time, I have the luxury of doing this. Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to do property management is, mainly to learn the business. My goal is not to manage these myself for the long term. So my goal is to turn them to a property management company down the road. But I felt like I needed to know what's involved in managing a property so I can actually manage the manager. down the road, and make sure they're doing what's needed to be done. So that's, and now I kind of have a hybrid. Some of my properties are a little farther out. So I have a leasing agent. So she leases it for me and then I take it over, with other things. But I'm actually thinking of giving her all my properties on that and just to manage, because I'm moving on to like bigger things now.
Yeah.
Mobile home parks.
You want to take your time back and collect those checks in the mailbox, right?
Yeah.
But I love what you said about, like rolling your sleeves up and really, like you said, diving deeper into the work. And so while there is, the research in the form of podcast and reading and doing all these different things, there's also the work of, like you said, actually doing the property management. And, there's the commitment of time, and you have to create the space for the time so that you can do it and do that job well. But it also is, like you said, you getting experience and expertise as you dedicate the time to do that, so that you are better equipped to pass it off and, know where there's red flags going off when someone is not doing their job from a property manager standpoint. Once again, I think it's just like you said, education and investment of time is one of those things that people kind of let fall by the wayside, and that maybe holds them back from being as successful as they could be at real estate.
Yeah, and in terms of property management, I've kind of, assembled my team now. So I really, I'm not handy. I can just change a light bulb. So, so anybody has any issues, I have my AC guy, I have my plumber, I have my handyman. So I just send a text to them. They go take care of it. I just pay it online. So it literally takes like 10 minutes, to take care of any issues that rise up. So I personally don't think it's a big deal. And there's a strong rental demand. So again, for showings, I would either have a leasing agent or, somebody else help me to kind of run an open house or show the property. So it's worked out well for me because I have a smaller portfolio, but as I'm growing, my goal is definitely to transition and give it to a good property manager.
I think that's super helpful. The other question I have is about how you finance the various properties. So you said now you have 16 different properties. Is that 16 different mortgages? What does it look like to get, I think a lot of people know, buying a primary residence, and then maybe they sometimes buy a second home. But when you get into purchasing multiple homes, is there different types of lending that happens there? Is there different types of down payments, interest rates, and things like that are applicable when you start to build a real estate portfolio?
Yeah, most of my properties are bank financed, and they are. I own them in an LLC and not in my personal name. That's just my choice for liability protection. So what I have done is, for some properties I did pay cash, but then I increased the value, I increased the operating income, and then I pulled all my cash out and then, finance them. And some I've just bought with the bank loan. Yes, you pay a little bit higher interest with the bank financing in an LLC versus if you were to buy personally. But fortunately, I bought them at a good enough price, and there's enough rental income that even if I pay 5% in interest, it is still cash flowing. And typically, putting 20% down payment for the bank finance properties, they like to see that.
Love it, love it, love it. So those are some good tips there. You got to have your finances organized enough that you have the appropriate down payment. And so one of the things that I've also, like I said, heard quite a bit is that the 20% down payment is a thing of the past. Everybody just puts down the minimum and that's it. And it sounds like, you're doing something different than that. So the 20% down payment is still something that you're doing as you go ahead and finance your various homes and get into the properties.
Yeah, and luckily, the 20% has come basically from the equity, that went up by increasing the operating efficiencies, raising the rents, and increasing the income. So for most of my properties, I have pulled my cash out of the deal. So even though I'm 20% have equity in them, but I don't have any of my own cash in the deal. It's called the BRRRR strategy. I'm sure you're familiar with that, with the bigger pockets, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Right.
So you buy something like under value, increase the value, then you go to the bank, and then, so that has worked well for me. And 16 units, some of them are like duplexes and triplex. So it's basically, like one mortgage on a 4-unit apartment building rather than 16 separate units. So they're smaller multifamilies.
Okay. And you're still doing the property management right now. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So then my next question would be like, do you have any horror stories or, what are some of the bumps and bruises that you experience with the, being a landlord and maybe with your renters, et cetera, that, people should be prepared for if they're, wanting to go down this road?
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had I had one eviction, so that was interesting. Had to pay a law company to get the tenants out. They kept telling me, "Oh, we're going to get rent now. We're going to get rent now," and me, like a naive person, I believe them. But ultimately, they didn't have the money. I had to evict them. So that was one experience, and the other experience I had an older gentleman in my property living alone, and he passed away, and nobody knew for 3 weeks. Yeah, and then we had to do the hazmat team, and they cleaned everything out. We had to rip out the drywall, the flooring, and the worst part was that the smell won't go away for many months. So the unit kind of sat vacant for like almost 6 months.
Wow.
So, yeah, but luckily it was part of a triplex. So, one unit was vacant, but the others were still rented and they were still being able to pay the mortgage. But yeah, that was an experience. So again, having adequate reserves is very important. And I think you have to have your financial house in order, before you embark on this. Having reserves is very, very important.
Yeah. Those are two really big examples. And I'm sure they both, like you said, were very expensive as well. But like you said, it still didn't outweigh. It didn't take away so much that it didn't make real estate investing worth it. But yeah. I think expenses are some of the things that people forget about as well. Like the money coming in is a great focus, but you have to realize some money is going to go out as well in order for the money to come in.
Yeah, and what I don't like, Lauren, is people saying, "Oh, this is you can buy this because this will pay your mortgage payment and taxes and insurance." But they forget to tell you that there's vacancy. Your units can sit vacant. Once my unit sat vacant for 2 months, there's going to be repairs. The roofs are going to, need replacement. I don't know how many hot water heaters and ACs I've already changed. Stoves will break. So all of these capital expenses, you have to have adequate reserve, and you have to account for all that. So typically, I look at, if it's whatever the income is, 50% will be your expenses. So I'm very conservative. So, just, if it rents for $1,000, you're not going to make 800, you'll probably make closer to 500. Right. Because you have to have money in reserve. So all of that adds up. So, that was something that I was aware of, but I talked to some investors, some wholesalers, just say, "Oh yeah, this will cover your mortgage and insurance, and then you will be cash flowing."
Yeah, it makes it sound so easy. And then, I've talked in previous episodes about my real estate experience where I had to buy an $18,000 roof without having the cash flow. So out of my own savings, because I was just breaking even on the, like you said, the mortgage, the insurance, and the rent, et cetera. So, the taxes, but having lived through that, very, very important to encourage others not to end up in that same situation.
Yeah, and this is not to discourage people, but it's just to be realistic, that these expenses will happen. So as long as you prepared for it and you account for it, then I still think this is the best thing there is, in 15, 20 years down the road, the properties will be free and clear and will cash flow even more. So yeah, it's get rich slow, but I think it's worth it.
Yes, I love what you just said. Get rich slow. That has been the theme of so many podcasts this year. And I think, like you said, when people think of real estate investing, they don't think of it as get rich slow. They think of it as get rich fast. But it is, in fact, a get rich slow strategy with lots of things you need to be thinking about along the way. So I love that. But you can get rich. That's the part we want you to focus on. You can, but you're going to get rich slowly, and you have to be financially stable and really organized along the way. All right. So as we kind of head toward wrapping things up, I want to start looking back to, generations to come. So, can you share a little bit about like what you wish you would have known in your, teens, 20s, kind of decade by decade through life? Like now, if you look back on it, like what do you want to tell the next set of generations of people that are coming behind you about how they can better organize their finances and what maybe would have done differently in those various age groups of your life?
Yeah, I think looking back, I was trained with the worker bee mentality, get a good education, get a good job, and then work there for 40 years and retire. And now looking back, I wish I was more entrepreneurial back then, instead of always having a W-2 or working for others. Also started investing much earlier, because in your 20s, you can afford to take much more risk, so you can, start buying real estate. And yes, I know when you're in your 20s, you don't have the capital, but there are many different ways that you can actually find capital partners. You can network, you can do some other hustle. So there's always ways to add value and, find what you don't have with other partners. I really think real estate works best as a team sport. So people who don't have the money, they can find people with money and, bring other skills to the table. So I wish I had started investing earlier. And also, I think mindset is very important. I wish I had invested, more in my mindset and my education that, pretty much you can do anything that you put your mind to. You don't have to always think inside the worker bee box, that this is the way it's going, this is the way you're taught, this is the way you should do it. So, be open to other ideas, other creative ways of doing things. So that would be and I tell my children that.
Yes. I love it. That's really good advice for, like you said, the generations that are coming behind and how to think about how to best organize your finances going forward. So we've reached this area of the podcast that I like to call the final sprint. I'm going to kind of rapid fire some questions at you and you tell me whatever is on your mind. So you don't have to say one word answers. You can just kind of keep them short and simple, but I'm just going to kind of tell you some random things and you tell me what you're feeling. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So you have $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
I would buy a book on mindset or investing.
All right. I love it. What about your worst money habit?
My worst money habit. I think I don't track my personal finances as much as I should. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. What's your best money habit?
My best money habit is living within my means and always having an emergency reserve and safety cushion.
I like it. Something you do for fun that does not cost anything.
Reading and walking. I borrow a lot of books from library, so that's free. Reading and walking. I really believe in feeding my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, even the walking part, just like getting some exercise, getting your blood flowing, really cool things. Last but not least, what is one thing that you would like to change about your own personal finances in the upcoming year?
I was thinking about that, and I do my own bookkeeping, and I'm newer to QuickBooks. So I wish, I would be more diligent and more consistent about, downloading and reconciling. So when my accountant asks for it, then I just have to rush and put it, then get it all figured out. So I wish I would get into like more consistent habit of keeping my books up.
Okay. So what is the action item that you're going to implement to make yourself be more consistent?
I'm going to put it on my calendar and time block, like first or second of every month, and then, make sure that I stick to that time block and, update my account or just hire a bookkeeper.
Right. There is also the idea of outsourcing that can save you the time and make sure that it gets done appropriately.
Yeah.
So if you all want to check in with Alka to see, reach out to her and say, are you doing your bookkeeping? Social media. All right. So we have made it to the finish line. You have won the final sprint. You're standing on the podium. You are a winner at the Worth Listening podcast. Thank you so much for being on the show. It is your time to shine. So tell us how we can support you, where we can find you, what you're up to, anything that you want to share with the audience about what you're doing and how we can help you continue on a path forward.
Sure. My website is Your Wealth MD, which is your YOUR Wealth MD, MD as in doctor, MD. And it's basically, just spreading the message of financial independence and multiple streams of income, particularly to, women, professional women, that, there are other avenues to generate multiple streams of income. So that would be the message, that I'm trying to get out. And, I have a website, so feel free to reach out, feel free to connect. I'd love to talk real estate. So I'm up for that anytime.
Awesome. Alka, thanks so much for being on the show today. And this was just really excellent.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for doing all the great work and all the great guests that you bring on your show. And, we're all learning together. Thank you.
We are, in fact, all learning together.